They called it the boldest expedition of its time, a journey so reckless, so ambitious, that many believed it would end in tragedy. A ship, 28 men, and a leader with an obsession to march straight across the frozen heart of Antarctica, a place no human had ever conquered. But within months, their ship would be trapped, crushed, and swallowed whole by the ice. They would be stranded on drifting floes in temperatures that could freeze flesh in minutes. No rescue, no radios, no chance of calling home. But yet, somehow, every single one of them survived. How? How did ordinary sailors, carpenters, and scientists endure nearly 2 years in one of the deadliest environments on Earth? What kind of leadership, courage, and sheer willpower made the impossible possible? This is not just an adventure. This is the story of Shackleton's Endurance, a survival epic that has inspired soldiers, CEOs, and dreamers for more than a century. Stay with me, because once you hear this tale, you'll never think about leadership, loyalty, or the limits of human endurance the same way again. The year was 1914. Europe stood on the brink of World War I. Nations were arming themselves, alliances were cracking, and the future of the world looked uncertain. And yet, on the far edge of London, one man was focused on something entirely different. Ernest Shackleton, 40 years old, broad-shouldered, restless, and known for his fiery charisma. Shackleton wasn't a politician nor a soldier. He was an explorer, part scientist, part showman, part gambler. He had already tried and failed to reach the South Pole. Others had beaten him to it. Robert Falcon Scott had perished in the attempt. Roald Amundsen had claimed the prize. But Shackleton? He wanted something bigger. He wanted to cross the entire Antarctic continent, nearly 2,000 miles of ice, wind, and death, from one ocean to the other. No one had ever done it. Some said it couldn't be done. To fund the dream, Shackleton charmed millionaires, wrote to governments, and plastered newspapers with advertisements seeking volunteers. The legendary ad read, "Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success." Hundreds applied, soldiers, sailors, scientists. Only 27 were chosen. On August 1st, 1914, the Endurance left London. By the time it reached Buenos Aires, the world had erupted into war. Shackleton offered his ship and his men to the government, but the reply came back, "Proceed." And so they did. The Endurance was built for this moment. A 3-masted barkentine, small by naval standards, 144 feet long, crafted from Norwegian oak. Her hull reinforced to withstand pressure from sea ice. She was as tough as ships came. But the Antarctic was tougher. From South Georgia Island, the Endurance sailed into the Weddell Sea in December 1914. Spirits were high. The men sang songs, played soccer on deck, and joked about the picnic ahead. But within weeks, the sea began to close. Sheets of pack ice drifted in, grinding against the hull. The ship pushed forward, dodging floes, waiting for cracks in the ice. By January 1915, the way forward was gone. The Endurance was frozen solid. At first, Shackleton remained calm. He told the men, "We are not stuck. We are simply wintering." He ordered the decks cleared, dogs exercised, and routines established. Discipline mattered. In such conditions, boredom could kill faster than hunger. But the weeks dragged on. The ice groaned and shifted, twisting the ship like a toy. Masts creaked. The hull shuddered. The men began to realize this was no ordinary delay. By October, the pressure became unbearable. One night, the ice squeezed the Endurance until her timbers exploded with cracks like gunfire. Water poured in, pumps failed. Shackleton gave the order, "Abandon ship." The men watched in silence as their beloved Endurance sank beneath the ice. Their home, their supplies, their link to the world, gone. And there they were, 28 men, stranded on drifting ice floes at the bottom of the planet. The men of the Endurance were now castaways, not sailors. Their world was a drifting desert of ice. No horizon, no land in sight, only endless ridges of frozen pressure, creaking and splitting with terrifying roars. They built makeshift camps on floes, hauling salvage supplies from the wreck. Tents were pitched, sled dogs chained, cooking stoves fired with seal blubber. They named the camp Ocean Camp. At first, the men kept spirits alive. They played soccer on the ice, staged mock concerts, and read aloud from the few books they'd saved. But slowly, the truth sank in. They were hundreds of miles from land. The ice beneath them was drifting north, slowly, unpredictably. Food was limited. Temperatures dropped to -20, -30, sometimes -50 degrees Fahrenheit. Nights lasted longer. The darkness crept in. Shackleton knew despair was as deadly as hunger. He visited every tent, every man, speaking words of encouragement. He shared his rations equally, never asking for more than he gave. His men began to believe in him, not because he promised safety, but because he never let hope die. By April 1916, the floe cracked beneath them. Ocean Camp was gone. They had no choice but to board their lifeboats, 3 small open boats, and face the freezing sea. April 1916. The ice broke apart beneath their feet. Shackleton gave the order, "Into the boats." 3 lifeboats, James Caird, Dudley Docker, and Stancomb Wills, were dragged into the freezing waters. The men clambered aboard, soaked by waves, clutching what little food remained. For days they rode through shifting pack ice, fighting frostbite, exhaustion, and hunger. Salt water froze in their beards. Their hands bled from the oars. Sleep was a luxury none could afford. At one point, towering waves nearly capsized them. Men bailed water with boots, praying the boats would hold. Then, a cry from the bow. "Land!" Elephant Island, a desolate, rocky spit of land, battered by wind and waves, but it was land, and it was salvation. The men staggered ashore, kissing the rocks, laughing, cheering. Yet relief was short-lived. Elephant Island lay far from shipping lanes. No rescue would ever come by chance. If they were to live, Shackleton had to act. He chose 5 men, loaded the sturdiest lifeboat, the James Caird, and prepared for an 800-mile voyage across the stormiest seas on Earth, aiming for South Georgia Island. Before departing, Shackleton looked each man in the eye. "Hold fast. I will come back for you." April 24th,
1916. Shackleton and 5 companions launched the James Caird into the Southern Ocean. Their boat was just 22 feet long, barely larger than a lifeboat. Their destination? South Georgia, 800 miles away. The journey was a nightmare. Gale-force winds, freezing spray, 30-foot waves. The little boat vanished in the troughs, reappeared on the crests, tossed like a leaf in a storm. Day after day, soaked to the bone, the men bailed water, fought seasickness, and clung to life. At night, their clothes froze solid. Their beards were stiff with salt and ice. Their hands were raw, blistered, bleeding. Shackleton stood at the tiller for hours, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He never let the men see his fear. He cracked jokes, shared the last scraps of food, and kept hope alive. After 2 weeks, on May 10th, they sighted land, South Georgia Island. Exhausted, starved, frostbitten, they had done the impossible. They had crossed the wildest ocean on Earth in a lifeboat.
But survival demanded one last trial. The James Caird had landed on the wrong side of South Georgia. Uninhabited, mountainous, brutal terrain between them and the whaling stations. Shackleton chose 2 companions. With crude gear, no tents, and a length of rope, they set off across glaciers and peaks that no man had ever crossed. For 36 hours they marched without sleep. They scaled cliffs, slid down icy slopes, and crossed crevasses bridged only by snow. At night, the cold bit into their bones. Hoo-hoo-hoo. Shackleton kept them moving with stories of hot meals and warm beds. His willpower carried them when their bodies failed. At last, they heard a sound that made their hearts leap. The whistle of a whaling station. Civilization, rescue, life. Shackleton staggered into the station, beard wild, clothes in rags. The men stared in shock. He had come from the impossible. Shackleton wasted no time. He organized rescue attempts, each one beaten back by ice, but he refused to give up. Finally, on August 30th, 1916, Shackleton reached Elephant Island with a Chilean ship. As he scanned the shore, a voice cried out, "They're all alive!" Every one of the 22 men Shackleton had left behind had survived. Not one life lost. Cheers erupted, tears flowed. And then, ha. Shackleton had kept his promise. Against all odds, he had brought his men home. In the years since, historians have called it the greatest survival story ever told. Shackleton's leadership wasn't about glory or conquest. It was about loyalty, endurance, and the unbreakable human spirit. And now, the question is, what would you endure for the people you love? What challenges would you face? What storms would you survive? If Shackleton's men could endure Antarctica and return alive, maybe you too can endure the challenges you face today. Join the adventure. Share your thoughts, your battles, and your victories in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more epic stories of courage and survival.